Now, you know what they say, or it's actually happened because it's part of my experience. God may shut one door, but guess what he does? I cannot believe what God has just allowed to happen. We had a speaker who's not here at this time, so that left some space. And lo and behold, Senator, what did I say? Senator Toi Hutchinson showed up. She is the member of the Illinois Senate and since 2009, and she's representing the 40th district, which includes the Bradley, Bourbonnais, and Kankakee area. So she is that's how I say it, y'all. And so she is representing you. So it is my honor and privilege because I didn't even know this was going to happen, that she is here today. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Toi Hutchinson.
Hey, you guys. So it was on my calendar, and then because we have such an insane schedule, somehow the confirmation never got back. But I've been waiting to be here because anytime there's anything that says women raising the bar, for anything, I want to be here. And I want to be here just because, not because I'm a senator, but because I'm Toi. And because I came to this position in my life in the most unconditional, backwards, uphill with a lead backpack and rocks in my shoes kind of way. It wasn't the thing that I thought that I would be doing. I was a good staffer. I was trained in press and media. I was an English major. I was blessed enough to go to college, still paying student loans, even though now my kids are in college. I have 2 kids in college. Now, see, unpack that. I still have student loans, and my kids are starting in school now. So it's an interesting time. But I'm here, and I wanted to see how many people would come, and I'm so happy that this room is full, because sometimes we need to encourage each other. We have to encourage each other. Sometimes it's not easy to find your own voice. And there are a whole lot of things that are around us that condition us to think that maybe the voice shouldn't be so loud. And for Black women in particular, when we get loud, then we're angry. So we deal with, it's amazing sometimes when I'm sitting in the middle of, and I'll tell you 2 different stories. At one point, I was in a Senate committee room, and we had said that we were not going to call a certain bill. And I told the lobbyists that were working on it, I'm not going to call a certain bill because all you have is your word. If I say I'm not going to call it, you can't walk into the committee room and see me slam a vote. That's not fair. It's not open. It's not transparent. I don't do that. So I knelt down to tell one of my colleagues, no, we're not going to call this bill. I already gave my word that we were not going to call it. We can call it next week once we bring the opposing sides together. And I said, don't worry, I follow directions. But he was sitting, and I was kneeling next to him. And he said, well, since you're down there. Wow. So I'm just going to let that sit for a minute. Another time I was sitting in a committee room, and the issue was maybe we should shorten the school day for a day because there was a certain school district in one of the most southern parts of Illinois, and they wanted to shorten the day to save some money because of the transportation costs. This is prior to the budget impasse. And I remember sitting there thinking, as a working parent, what would I do if I lost one day of school with my kid? And when I started in the Senate, my kids were 7, 9, and 11. What would I do if I lost a day? It's already the situation that the school day doesn't match a work day. And we already know that between 3 and 6 are the most dangerous hours in the world for kids that are unsupervised. So I said, what would I do? And I signaled that I wanted to say something in the committee, and they said, Senator Hutchinson, I hit my button and I asked that question. And my colleague looked at me and said, well, pull your toes back because I'm probably about to step on some feet in here. So if you're just sending your kids to daycare, maybe you shouldn't be in this conversation. If school is daycare to you, maybe you should just be in this conversation. It happened to be a committee for which I was the only woman on the committee, and I was the only one with school-age kids. And those were 2 times when there was an attempt, sometimes unknowingly, because, we have to burst into systems and learn to use our voices, that they tried to silence my voice. But I go back to when I was in 6th grade, I had a wonderful teacher named Mrs. Giddings who pulled a topic out of a hat, and it was a random topic, and she graded us on how we could talk about it for 30 seconds. You had to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's how we got graded. And I loved those half-minute talks. We called them half-minute talks. I was in 6th grade. And every time it came around, I was like, me, I want to go, let me go. And some of my other classmates hated it. I mean, like, hated it, because sometimes you don't like this. I think I just always came out wanting to say something. So I used to do those talks. Then we did it for like 3 years, because I was in honors English from 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade. And then I got to high school, and I had a high school teacher who looked at me and he said, well, today we're going to do minute talks. And my face lit up. Like, I know how to do this. I was 14 years old, and I know how to do this. And I pulled a topic out of the hat, and it was some random topic like bicycles. and I gave my speech for a minute, and the teacher looked at me. He said, see me after class. So I stayed after school, and he told me he wanted me to be on the speech team, and that he would be my coach. I had teachers who drove me to speech competitions and drove me to NAACP AXO competitions so I could talk. I had people who loved me enough to see that I had a talent. But it was bigger than them seeing that I had a talent. I had people who loved me enough who told me I had a voice and to not be afraid to use it at 14. So as I'm growing up, it was something that I always kind of fell back. And I loved musical theater. I loved oratorical declamation, and I loved special occasion speaking, and I competed all over the place. And my mom, would try. I remember when I won the AXO competition at 15, and I was on my way to the national competition, and I got to go meet Rosa Parks, and there was a parade. My mother put on every single piece of camera equipment she had around her neck, and so they just thought she was press. She literally went up the middle of the parade route behind the thing like, that's my baby. Because they knew, and everybody around me knew, that I had a voice. So as I got married and I had children, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to move into this kind of public sphere, I worked for elected officials. I didn't think that I was going to be the elected official. But I did know that I wanted to go to law school, and I didn't know how I was going to get there. I knew at this point now I'm married, I have 3 kids. I had to say for their college education, how could I go to school and add a whole bunch more debt when I still had these children to put through school? And I remember there were some folks in my family who said, why are you doing this? That is selfish. Like, your job's them now. You're supposed to be taking what are you doing? But I drove an hour and a half every day to Northern Illinois University. It was the cheapest law school I could pick. I sat down one day and I asked God, I said, if I'm supposed to do this, you're going to tell me, because I've always wanted to do this, so I'm going to try to do this. And I'd met a lot of stupid people who were lawyers, and I couldn't understand how they were lawyers. So I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. So I applied to only one law school after I took the LSAT blind, because I just believed that he would tell me if I was supposed to do this. And I got in. And when I got the letter saying I got in, I was like, well, okay. Okay. So I went to the school, and the first year, when I was driving an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back, and with construction, because I would get on 57 North and I would go to 80 East, and I would get from 80 East to 294 North to 88 West to get to school every day. So with construction, sometimes it would take 2 hours. I never got to stay and discuss cases at the bar after class because I had to go home and make dinner. I wasn't your normal, typical student. I sat in the old lady row, and I always had Advil and Neosporin and Band-Aids in my purse. And everybody used to come up and ask us for like dating advice. I said, well, no, he's just not that into you. You should just concentrate on school. You should pray a little bit more and just concentrate on school. But that first year, I started in August. In September, my daughter was bitten by a pit bull and had 18 stitches cheek to lip in her face. In October, my brother-in-law was shot in the back in a failed robbery attempt right in front of his parents' house. So we had just started torts cases, and I would drive to the hospital and make sure that we took turns so that he was never there alone. In December, they shut down the campus because there was a bomb threat, and what they said was credible, with a threat that said, all you niggers go home. They interrupted finals and it shut the school down for 2 days. In February, the NIU shooting happened, and I was in the law library when 6 people died across the street. So when parents were worried about sending their kids to this college campus, my kids were worried about me going to that college campus. So I didn't know how my grades were going to be. I had no idea how my grades were going to be. So at the end of the semester, because in law school, they can C- your way out. Getting anything lower than a C is failing. I hadn't been a student in almost 20 years. I can't say 20 years, maybe almost 15 years at that point. I couldn't figure out how to write a law exam. And I am not accustomed to failing. And anything I tried, my mother told me, you can do anything you want to do if you just work hard. So it was like when I stood up and got the part in Dreamgirls as one of the dreams, she was like, what are you doing? I said, I'm singing. She said, you can't sing. I said, you told me I could do whatever I want to do. If the thing. So when I got my grades, they were bad. And I was like, what do I do? I decided to stay in DeKalb and convince the legal writing instructors to teach me how to write a law exam. My legal writing instructor told me, you aren't a very good, legal writing is not your specialty. And I was like, no. I make sense when I write. I'm an English major. People don't understand lawyers. I don't know what you're talking about. I write well, but not well enough for the school. So I went to summer school and I took 3 classes and I poured myself into learning how to write a law exam. And at the end, and then I took the final, and I knew I had done well. I knew I had smoked it. I didn't have my grades yet, but I knew I laid it down. I knew. And then the day after I took the final, not knowing what my summer school grades were, I got a letter from the school that said, you are dismissed. And I was like, nope, that cannot possibly be. That just cannot be. I went to summer school. I took these classes. If you use my grades from summer school, you can apply them to my thing, and I won't be below what the threshold is. That cannot be. And they said, your academic performance or the dismissal is based on your first year's academic performance, and you were below the threshold, therefore you are dismissed. I said, okay, then I'll appeal. Because remember, I'm trying to be a lawyer. So I said, I'm appeal. I appealed. They denied the appeal. I sat down in the dean's office, one of the deans. He was the dean of students. Not a very nice man. He told me, you have some political things going on. You're active, you're a mom. Maybe the law is just not for you. And all I could think of in that moment was, do not cry in this man's office. Sit yourself up straight. Do not give him your tears. So I steeled my back. I looked at him. I said, one day I'm going to be a lawyer, whether you help me or not. So thank you for your time. I walked out, and I got in the hallway. That's when the tears came, because I was like, I can't believe I just said that. I got my grades within the next 2 weeks, and I had gotten 2 A's and a B. So then I said, you know what? Since there is no process for what you do to appeal the denial of an appeal, I'm lawyered up now, so consider this the Supreme Court. There was one other woman who was older than me. She was in her 50s, and she had worked at a law firm her whole career as a legal assistant and a legal, I can't think of the name of it, a paralegal in a law firm for 25, 30 years. And the owners of the law firm told her that if she went to law school, got her JD, and passed the bar, those are pretty high hurdles. If you go to law school, get your JD, and pass the bar, we will give you this firm. So she was in her 50s, and she was going to law school every day, but she had written everything for every attorney in that place the entire time for her whole career. They dismissed her too. So when I went back, I said, you know what? Because at that point, I had already been chief of staff for the Senate Majority Leader. For those of you guys who remember Debbie Halverson, I had already been her chief of staff. So I knew my way around the legislative process. And I said, well, I think the legislature might be curious to know what your recruitment and retention policies are at this school. I think maybe we might need to do some reports. We know how you are at the undergraduate level, but B school and law school are where minority students tend to get lost. And I was actually admitted here because you hyped up your non-traditional student status, but you dismissed the two oldest African-American women in a class where there were only 4 African-American people in it total. There were only 4 of us, and they dismissed 2 of us. And we were the 2 non-traditional ones that were older. And then they denied both the appeals. So when I got done, I got back into law school, but I got her back in too. Now, when I was 14, there were people around me who told me I had a voice. So when I think back on that time, especially when I graduated in 2014, and I sat on that dais, because it took me 7 years to finish law school, with 3 campaigns and 3 children, and the travel from the Capitol and the travel to there. And I came up with consortium agreements with anybody who would let me take a class there is where I took a class there. My last semester during session, I took 14 hours. So I was writing bills, writing my papers. And when I walked across that stage in that same week, my youngest graduated from 8th grade and my oldest graduated from high school, all in the same week. But when I sat on that dais, I sat next to that dean who said, maybe the law is just not for you. I kissed him first. I gave him a big old hug. Because yes, it is. And I'm good at it. And no matter how many times people around me tell me that I can't, I know who I am and I know whose I am. So when I'm in the midst of this wonderful General Assembly, and I think about raising my 3 teenage kids, I take all of those lessons and I apply them to the people that I serve with. I figured if I can deal with teenagers, I can deal with senators. And sometimes, politically speaking, that's how they act, like teenagers. But I know in my gut that I am here for a time such as this. I know in my heart that I wouldn't have the speaking ability I have if I wasn't intended to use it. And I know in my soul that I have to be visible to the people that I represent, because you cannot grow up to be what you don't see. So that's why I wanted to be here today. And thank you, Chastity, for letting me bump. And thank you so much for putting on an event like this. Don't ever apologize for not being from Kankakee, because we can be a little closed around here. We say, people say that about Chicago, like, don't bring anybody nobody sent. You know, we could be like, where you from? How long you been here? We put you through your paces. I know, because they did it to me. But we are happy you're here. And we're happy that when you get grounded, you put one foot in front of the other one and said, let me see how I can help ground some other folks. And there's nothing more powerful than when you reach a hand out to somebody else and say, I think I'm an amazing woman, and I know other amazing women, so I think you amazing women should know each other. So I need you to believe that. I need you to hold that. I need you to, when you leave here today, call somebody and tell them that. You know a woman in your life right now that's not getting any encouragement. And you know there's a lot of people in here who probably know what it's like to go all day without anybody saying you are doing a good job. Sometimes we get that fulfillment on Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday knocks you for a loop. So every chance you get, every place you go, find another person who looks like you to tell them you are doing a phenomenal job. And if nobody told you today, I see you. I see you. Women raising the bar is exactly that. You don't walk through the door and be comfortable when the door shuts behind you. You open that thing up and you look back. Because remember, every trial in life, every time I've ever been in a situation where I didn't know what I was supposed to do next, we know what we mean. We say that still, quiet voice. And you know whose voice that is. And if you're still enough, you can hear it tell you That when you're in the midst of driving through a storm, if you're in the car and you're driving and you know you have a plan, you know exactly where you want to go. It's like, I'm going to go out, I'm gonna leave my house, I'm going to go here, I'm going to drive down to the street, I'm going to turn right, then I'm going to go down this street, then I'm going to turn left, then I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to park, and then I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to go back here. Because I have a plan. I know exactly where it is I'm going. It doesn't account for construction. It doesn't account for your car broke down. It doesn't account for when your money's not right. It doesn't account for when people literally throw blockades in your way. Here's what you need to remember. That little thing in the GPS that says recalculating. It's okay to recalculate. It's okay to recalculate. So know in your soul, know in your heart, know in your gut, know in your whole being that you are doing a phenomenal job. And I see you.